When you're at field day and you sit down to use this wonderful gear that the club has, you're going to have a terminal. On that terminal is going to be N1MM. Why do we use that? Because it is a fantastic bit of software that coordinates all of our radio stations, tells you who's a dupe, who isn't, does a logging. It's incredibly useful. It is the gold standard for logging an event like field day. We use it for field day and big events. So tonight, this is your chance to figure out what is it, how do you use it? Rick Miller is going to talk to us about that.
Well, I'm really excited to do this. I've given this presentation many times to many clubs, and there's two words that were coined by Douglas Adams many decades ago. The first thing to do when you sit down to log at field day is don't panic. It's fun. It's easy. The software is there to help you, and you just need to let it help you. These are pictures on this front screen from Loud and Amateur Radio Group field days from years past, back when we used to have a major operation. You can see we had, monoband beams up 40 or 50 feet. But what I want you to look at is the upper left-hand and the lower left-hand corner. The upper left-hand corner is Anya, who was a brand new ham. She came in and she learned really fast. She did really well. And if you look down at the lower right-hand corner, those are two seasoned contesters, regularly score, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of QSOs in an average contest. And look where their hands are and look where their eyes are focused. So the newbie is turning the knob on the radio. The experienced folks are at the keyboard. And I think what we'll find out as we go through here is that in order to get credit for your QSOs, you need to log them. So you can play with the radio all day. If you don't log anything, then it might as well not have happened. All right, so let's dive into it. We're going to just a brief overview. We're going to say what is N1MM and how we're going to use it. We've already talked a little bit about that in the introduction. There's a lot of windows available to you, and you need to find out where the business end is, where your home base is in those windows. You don't even have to have but maybe 2 or 3 open in order to be effective. Then we're going to walk through what it's like to sit down and make a QSO or a Q, which is just a data entry effort. And N1MM is specifically designed to help you with that data entry. That's the whole reason N1MM exists. We'll talk about a couple of other helpful features and guides, just some basic things that N1MM is there to help you with. And then I'll walk through a demo of actually logging some QSOs based on some sideband audio that I recorded. All right, so let's dive into there. So what is N1MM? It's logging software with many features. It's about 250,000 lines of code. It's not an insignificant software effort. It is the world's most popular contest logging software. It's used by the folks that are the world champions for the most part. There's a few others that are still in use, but N1MM is by far the most used worldwide, all over the world. It's got a staggering number of features, and features are being added pretty regularly, several a year. It's got logging, it's got dupe checking. You can network the computers together so you can merge all their logs and distribute the logs in redundant copies. It will control your rig. It will help you with QSO automation assistance so you can be more efficient. And it's absolutely free. And it's named eponymously for its creator, Tom Wagner, whose call is N1MM. And at Dayton, I had a really good time with Tom. We sat down and talked for a couple of hours about it. And he says the reason it's free is because nobody can make demands of him. So when you sell software, there's a certain amount of a certain expectation as to, you've got to do this for me because I paid you. And he didn't ever want to be beholden to anybody. So he has He has a team of folks that donate their time to maintain this software, and they do a darn good job. And it's ironic that even the folks that charge for software aren't as successful as he is. It's created specifically for contest logging, and this is a quote that I've heard Tom say many times. Contest logging is a heads-down data entry activity. You can't be reaching for the mouse. You can't be reaching for knobs unless you need to adjust maybe a gain control or a filter bandwidth. It's basically hands on the keyboard, heads on the screen, and then just log the cues. So why do we use it? We already talked about that. Most important reason is to get the QSOs recorded, and recorded in a way that you can submit to the contest organizers. And it also helps with QSO automation. To a greater extent or lesser, depending on how you have it set up. It's got a common look and feel across all stations. You can go from one station to the next, and you sit down and you're using the exact same software. You don't have to relearn things as you go on. It's got it keeps track of what your frequencies you're on because it's talking to your radio all the time. And it's got replicated log storage. There's a copy of the log on every one of the computers on the network. And any one of those logs, if all but one computer die, you still have the whole log for your effort to that point. It keeps the combined log from all stations. Now, there is an exception with GOTA because of the way the contest is structured. It has to be kind of logged separately. So you won't see the GOTA QSOs on there, but you will see all the others. And I guess you're having 3 stations plus maybe a VU that's on the network then. It's going to help you detect some errors in copying QSO information. If N1MM lets you log it, that doesn't mean it's right. But if it doesn't let you log it, it means you've made a mistake and you should probably listen to it. And as I said, it lets you produce a log that you can send right into the ARRL in a format that they accept. There's built-in support for literally hundreds and hundreds of contests. And the criterion Tom uses for incorporating a contest into N1MM is that it averages 2,000 participants per year for 3 years. We're just about to add another contest to it that's just crossed that threshold. So there's a lot of contesting going on in the world. It also, for smaller contests or ones that are just trying to make the grade, there's a structured way to build a user-defined file for user-defined contests that the software can read that file and help you score that as well. So as I said, there's a bunch of windows. There's 22 different windows you can bring up with this little window drop-down menu here. And we're going to focus on just one tonight. If you know how to use this window, you can log with N1MM. Everything else is there as an optional assistance to you, or to add extra information or to guide you for band changes and things like that. So here's the entry window. Let's see. Okay. So it's basically your home base. It's where the focus automatically ends up. If you've got it's all 22 windows open on N1MM and you start typing, it's going to go in the highlighted thing on this window. He actually breaks some of the Windows standard focus standards in order to have that happen, because if you have to reach for your mouse and select that window in the middle of a contest, then you're not going to be very efficient. So the fields that you're interested in, these little fields here where you type in, there's the call sign field. Obviously, every QSO starts with copying down the call sign of the person you're communicating with. And then there's the exchange fields. Now, the exchange, for those of you that aren't familiar with contesting, that's the minimum amount of information you have to send and receive in order for the QSO to count. And in field day, We have a class, which for you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, your guys are a 3A, I think you said, Mike. And the other is your section, which is your ARRL section. So call sign, station class, and the section. Once you enter all that information, you've completed the QSO. Of course, the other person will acknowledge as well. Everything else on here is you don't really need to worry about. We're going to talk now. I'm going to talk to you about a few keystrokes. Let's see. I've got everything except the last bullet here. The fields are smart. They try to help you and suggest what's going to go in there based on whatever knowledge the software has. And they also make it hard for you to enter stuff that isn't valid. So how do you move between fields? Well, if I were just sitting down in a data entry system like this, the first thing I would say is, well, you use tab to move between fields and you type. And you can actually do that with N1MM. But N1MM, you don't want to use tab, because if you use spacebar to move between fields, believe it or not, it doesn't type a space into the field. I think there's one contest where it does. You got to be careful of. But for field day, if you hit spacebar, it's going to move to the next field, and it's also going to do all sorts of things in the background to say, there's blank fields over there. Can I suggest what might be in there? Now, oftentimes it doesn't have anything to suggest. But for instance, if you're working somebody on CW that somebody else has already worked on single sideband, and you enter that call sign and you hit spacebar, guess what it's going to fill in? It's going to fill in the exchange from what the previous guy copied into the field. So that's one example of how it can help you. You can also, and this is up to your organizers, there's something called a call history file that has basically a guy that collects field day logs from whatever the last 2 or 3 years and puts in every single call sign and what their exchange was. So if somebody was on last year, they may, and you type that call sign in today, the N1MM, if you wanted to, can actually put in what its class and section was from last year. Does that mean it's right? No. But that saves you typing. Now you're just verifying what you're looking at rather than having to type it from scratch. You can turn that feature off if you want. Some people like it, some people don't. So anyway, to enter, you just type. You type the call sign, hit spacebar, you type the class, hit spacebar, and you type the section, and then you hit enter. And that's it. That's all it takes. There's for CW operators, there's some really cool automation stuff that you can do where you won't follow that. But if you're operating phone, that's all you got to do. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of keystrokes here. So enter checks to see, first of all, have you entered something in each of those fields? And you can hit enter when you're in any of the fields. It doesn't matter where you are. But if there's something in there and N1MM sees that you haven't broken any rules, like entered an invalid section or entered an invalid station category, doesn't mean they're right. It just means that they could be right. So anyway, if you hit enter and everything passes those checks, you're done. It clears everything out, enters the QSO in the log. It's been recorded and you're ready for the next one. So Control W, let's say you go in there and you're not looking, or you're looking at the keyboard and you end up typing the section into the call sign field, and you look up and everything's just totally messed up and you want a do-over. Control W will wipe the entire QSO entry, put you back to square one for that QSO, and you can start all over again. Well, let's say you enter something and you realize you got the call sign wrong, and it's, of course, N1MM will let, if it's a valid call sign, It doesn't know whether if you put the right one in or not. It's going to go ahead and put it in the log. Well, if you hit Control Q, it's a little bit of a do-over. What it does is it steps back to the log, to the last thing that you entered, brings it back up there, and now you can change it and hit enter, and you fixed it kind of on the fly. The last one is, and I'm sure Mike will support me on this, is the first thing you do is you make sure that N1MM knows who the operator is. And how do you tell N1MM who the operator is? Use Control O. And there's a couple of ways to do it, but that's the easiest way, at least for me to remember. Hit Control O for operator, and pops up a little window. You enter the call sign of the operator, and then you hit enter. And then the N1MM in its internal log will keep track of who's made each QSO. Okay, so those are 4 very important things to need to use, and we'll let's see. As I said, Control O to enter the operator's call. In previous field days, that's been a requirement. That's not optional, because we used to keep statistics, and people were interested in how well they did. So sitting down and making a QSO, you make sure the operator is entered, and you don't have to do that for every QSO. Once you put it in there, it's sticky. It'll stay the same until you change it. Make sure the log window is highlighted, which means that N1MM is basically got the focus, and the cursor's in the call sign field, and that's kind of the default condition for it anyway. So 99% of the time it'll already be there. Make sure the frequency and mode are correct at the top of the entry window. And let me bring up an entry window here real quickly to show you that. So here's an entry window. This is actually a live one. I have N1MM running on the computer. Let's take a look at some other things up here. For instance, this has got a frequency, 14.198.09 kilohertz, and upper sideband. And it's actually connected to my radio right now. So if I spin the dial on the radio, you'll see it changes. So N1MM is keeping track of what frequency I'm on, because you've got a frequency is part of every log entry. So it's got, make sure if the radio isn't hooked up, that you have the right frequency in there. So how do I enter a frequency? Let me save that for later, because that's an unusual condition. That's only if something fails. I'll talk about that a little later. So frequency and mode on the top of every window. The call sign field has got some really cool things to do. Let's say I want to change the radio to CW mode. Well, I could go over and go through the menu, or turn a knob, or hit a button, or I could just type CW in here. And now my radio's been changed to CW, and it's indicated up here. If I want to come back to single sideband, I can go there. Let's say I want to move somewhere else within the band. Let's say I want to go down to 14.150, 14150. Just enter the frequency in kilohertz, not megahertz, and boom, it changes your radio there. And this is what you will have to do if for some reason the radio is not coupled to the computer. That's something that your station captain will give you guidance on. 99% of the time, it's, whatever the radio is always telling N1MM what it's on, and N1MM knows about that. Then you plug in your headset, and you're off and running. Okay. So then you log the QSO. Listen carefully to the call of the other station and type it in. Be aggressive. Don't worry about, being very meticulous about it. If you make a mistake and you want to start all over again, it's Control W is your friend. It just starts you all over again. And I'll give you an example of that. Let's say WA1BNM is calling, and I go WA1BNN. Oh, no, that's not right. Well, I could just do M there. Or let's say it's WB1BNM. I can just hit Control W and just do WB1BNM. Okay. So Control W is kind of your friend. It does make you enter the whole thing all over again. You can still do backspace. You can use your left and right arrows to all the normal editing stuff still works. But Control W is sort of the flushing it. So as soon as your call sign is entered, go ahead and hit spacebar. Well, let me make it W1AW, and I'll show you some of this other 1AW. What I've done is I've loaded the log from last year's event that I did with my group, and I know that we worked W1AW. So I'm going to hit spacebar on W1AW. Well, let me first hit W1AW. If I hit tab to go between fields, all it does is move me to the next field. And notice it cycles around. But if I hit spacebar after I enter the call, look what happens. Well, I've already worked W1AW on another band or another mode, and so it pre-fills what the information is there. Now, I just have to listen to the other guy and make sure it's the same. If it's different, you got to log what you hear. But this saves an awful lot of time, and especially if it's a station that it's got a lot of noise, or you're not used to listening to single sideband in a noisy environment, this is a very helpful thing to do. So at this point, if it's all correct, all you got to do is hit enter, and you log it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to log. It's going to log W1AW 5F Connecticut on 14150 upper sideband, and that's going to appear in the log. So boom, you're done. If it's somebody that's not in the log, then you're just going to have to copy what you hear. Okay, let's say he's in California. So if I hit enter right now, if we were in a classroom, I'd say, would it be okay? And the answer is no. I'm hitting enter, and it says it's got a missing or invalid section. So the reason is that even though he's in California, we need to know what part of California. So there is no ARRL section called California. There's I forget how many. There's like 9 or 10 sections in California. So let's say he was in Santa Barbara. So if I hit SB, then that works. There's several states like Virginia. It's obviously pretty easy, but Massachusetts, Texas, New York, New Jersey, California. I'm sure there's many others. The state is not the same as the section, so you have to be familiar with that. Most station captains will have a copy of the list of valid ARRL sections. But if phonetics are used and the signal is good enough, you won't need to know the ARRL sections, because you'll just put down the letters that they tell you what it is. It's probably a good thing to mention too. Phonetics on sideband, because it's tough to understand, folks. Sometimes you can't assume it's like an FM repeater connection where you have pretty good audio quality. Okay, so there. See how easy it is. You just have to type in 3 things, and all three of those things are coming in your ears and coming out your fingers. Okay. So what if things don't go smoothly? Like I said, just remember Douglas Adams, don't panic, and remember your towel. That's only for the Hitchhiker's Guides fan. If you make a mistake that you notice before you hit enter, just hit the space bar to get to the right field. Don't worry about left and right arrows, or grab the mouse. If you're using the mouse a lot, you're not using the program correctly. You can use the mouse. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's good to keep your hands on the keyboard if you can. So anyway, you can hit the space bar and until you have it in the right field. Let's bring that up again. We'll do K1ZZZ, and it's a class of 2W, and the section is Virginia. And, well, there is no 2W. It's supposed to be 2A. So I'll just hit spacebar and look at. It's really interesting. It's smart enough to know that you don't want to probably retype the entire call sign. You probably want to just change letters, right? But the other ones, they're very short. So he actually pre-highlights the whole thing and it's just going to replace it. So now you just hit 2A and you're done. Okay? So that's what you do if you realize the mistake before you hit enter. If you hit a mistake and it's an invalid entry and 1mm is not going to let you enter it, and you're gonna have to fix it. But if it's a valid entry but incorrect, then you just hit Control Q to recall the last QSO. So let's show how that works. So I'm going to enter something. Let's see, AI1V, 1E connect. Oh wow, how about that? My call sign has been reissued. Okay, we'll say it's 1D. So now I'm going to enter it. It's in the log. Oh, it was 1E. So if I hit Control Q, notice this little quick edit comes up. Okay. I space over to 1D, change it to 1E, and boom, I'm done. So there are other ways to change things, farther back in the log, but you probably will want to ask for help at that point. If for some reason you just say, by God, I have no idea what's wrong. I'm sitting at the keyboard. The operator is starting to make another QSO. I just need to move on. Then you can hit Control Alt Enter. And like all Control Alt things, you should use it infrequently. Well, let's just say AI1V again. It's a dupe, but I will say it's enter 1W. Missing invalid call sign. Oh, no, I want to enter it. Oh, no. And I'm just going to hit Control Alt Enter. Boom. And it's going to let you enter a comment if you want, or you can just accept the pre-filled forced QSO comment. So that gets annotated in the log somewhere that can be used later for analysis if you want. But it will force that QSO in there. If you later figure out that you've made a mistake, I'm going to hit Control Q, and I say, oh, of course, is 1E, and then I can fix it. Okay, so those are sort of your get out of jail free cards. So Control Q, once again, is a quick edit. And you can actually, if you keep hitting Control Q, it walks back through the log, but that gets pretty confusing pretty fast. So you probably don't want to use it other than just what the last one was. And then Control Alt Enter if you just, if you want to eject. If you're doing it a lot, then something's wrong. You probably need to ask for help. Okay, let's see. The log window is another window that's very useful. I always have it up. And let me bring up the live log window here. Man, there's a lot of windows open. Okay, so there's a live log window. And it's the cool thing about it is this is going to show you the merged log. So you're going to be networked with two other stations, and as they make QSOs, they're going to appear on here as well. So you can kind of see how everybody's doing. And it's sort of neat. One cool thing is, like, if I enter W1AW, notice there's a below the line here. This shows me that I've already worked them on 14150 and USB because he's already in the log. So let me try another one. Let's try let's see, NC4S. Okay, now he's not in the log. Okay, so at any rate, if other stations or you have worked them on a different band or mode, it will show up below the line down here. everything above the line is actually your log. And it's got all the normal, stuff that you'll see in a spreadsheet. You can sort on any one of these headings. I highly recommend that you do ascending by date and time. Otherwise it gets confusing. But if you're looking for something like, did I work this particular call? You can sort it by call sign, and then they're all alphabetical, and you can look for it that way. So anyway, log window, very important. It's sort of like a really good go-to window as well. One interesting thing about Control Q is you can, N1MM only brings up QSOs that your station has made. So if you hit Control Q, it's okay if the other two stations have already made QSOs since you did that. It's going to find the last QSO that you entered, not the ones that are in the log. So as you can kind of tell, the folks that design and implement this are really good at what they do, and they know what the environment is like. It's not like Microsoft trying to guess what your workflow is for word processing. Okay. So I already mentioned about this. If you have pre-entered information, I can't emphasize this enough. Make sure it's correct, even if it's different from what another station has logged. Make sure it's correct and log what you hear. It's good in after action to figure out how accurate it was, or did this guy start sending a different class in the middle of the contest, which he's not supposed to do, and things like that. So at any rate, always log what you hear. Only use what the pre-filled information is as a suggestion. Okay, another one is dupe. A dupe, for those of you that aren't familiar with the term, is, this contest lets me work everybody once on each mode and band. So I can work everybody, I guess you're three modes, right? You're CW, sideband, and digital. You can work everybody 3 times on each band. So, but you cannot work him twice, say on CW on 20 meters. So we've already worked him on 20 meters. And let's say you've been calling CQ and this guy calls you and you see dupe. Well, there's 2 ways to react to it. One is to say, you're already in the log, old man, you're a dupe. And then, and he'll say, oh no, I don't have you in my log. And then you'll say, oh yeah, you do. It was, you go back and you see, oh yeah, it was at 1740 on 14047. And he says, oh, well, I don't have that. So meanwhile, you've just wasted probably 30 seconds trying to convince somebody who may have copied your call sign wrong, by the way. There's all sorts of reasons for a dupe. It's not just that, it's not just that somebody is being dumb and calling you twice. The other option, and this is what I always advise people to do, is just work them, okay? If you submit dupes, now field day is not officially scored, but if you submit dupes to a contest, guess what? There's absolutely no penalty for doing it. It's much faster to just work the guy again. Let's say that he copied my call sign, which is N1RM, and he copied me as W1RM. So when he's calling me again thinking he hasn't worked me. So that means I'm not in his log. So this way, at least I get in his log. And if there is log checking going on, then we both get credit for it. So just work dupes. It's going to tell you that, yeah, you're a dupe, but guess what? It's going to be real easy to copy him because he's going to hopefully just say the same thing he said last time. And you'll just have to hit enter. So this is completely up to your station captains as to how they want to handle it. But my advice to everybody is just work dupes. Now, I've only made one exception to that in my life, and that was one field day. It was late at night, and I had one guy call me 5 times in 20 minutes. He clearly was not keeping a log. He was just dialing around, listening for people calling CQ and answering them. And I on the sixth time, I said, sorry, old man, you've worked me 5 times in the last 10 minutes. So you need to kind of keep track of what you're doing. So I just did that because I was exasperated. But anyway, there's no reason not to work dupes unless somebody's really cutting into your efficiency by just calling you multiple times. So I'm showing you 2 very familiar windows, right? The entry window and the log window. This is something called an info window, and I like to leave it up there because it has a couple of really good pieces of information. First of all, up here, it tells you who's logged in as the operator or who N1MM thinks is operating. So what I usually do when I leave something to the next operator, I usually type in a fictitious call sign that says L0GIN. One thing you'll notice is when I changed the call sign, the windows, all different windows came up and they moved around. So the N1MM remembers the Windows preferences of every operator. That's kind of a thing that's very cool. So, and you'll see that when I put my call sign back in as the operator, it goes back to where it was before. So there's, it's just an amazing. I've used this software for 15, 20 years now, and it never ceases to amaze me. Okay, so that's one thing that's on there. You can see if the right person is logged in as the operator. The other thing is it tells you how long it's been since your last QSO, and you should pay attention to that. Notice that it's red. It's on a red background. It's saying, why the heck aren't you making QSOs? You should be making QSOs. This is an operating event. The other thing is it gives you a little bit of a bar graph here, and it takes a while to get used to it. This gives you QSOs per hour, your rate. This is in the last 10 QSOs you made, the first bar. The second bar is how you've averaged in the last 100 QSOs. And the third bar is how well you've averaged in the last 60 minutes. And this one tells you what your average has been for this clock hour. In other words, since the top of the hour. So, tall bars that are green are much better than short bars that are red in terms of operating efficiency. I'm going to bring up another window that I like and that I think a lot of people will like. It's called the score summary. This tells you basically how you're doing score-wise in the event. You can see that. This was I've imported an entire field day into here, so we've got about 3,800 QSOs. Excuse me, 1,941 QSOs. I was going to say 3,800 points, because all the operators we had before, we all worked CW, and so we get 2 points per QSO instead of just 1. So anyway, but we'll also see that there's a couple of sideband QSOs, and these are the demonstrations that I did. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play some audio. Okay, hopefully you can hear what's going on. And this was from a Loudon. This is the Loudon Amateur Radio Group call sign.
CQ Field A, CQ Field A, Kilowatt 4, Lima, Romeo Golf, K4 LRG Field A. CQ Field A, CQ Field A, this is Kilowatt 4, Lima, Romeo Golf, K4 LRG Field A. K8 MCN, this is K4 LRG, or 5 Alpha Virginia, over. 1 Delta in Missouri, over. Roger, your 1 Delta Missouri. Have a great field day. This is K4 LRG, QRZ. VE2 UMS, this is K4L.
Okay, notice I just paused that. Noticed VE2 UMS is already in the log, so it's gotten pre-filled. So all I need to do is check to make sure that he gives the same information as what's pre-filled.
RG 5 Alpha Virginia, over.
Okay, Quebec City is QC. You'll get used to those phonetics, or excuse me, those abbreviations for them. But if somebody just says Quebec City and you don't know what it is, you can ask him. Everybody should be giving you phonetics for their abbreviated section identifier. And don't be shy about asking. If you don't know what he said, you've got to ask and get it correct, because an incorrect QSO is usually worse than a missing QSO.
Thanks for Quebec City. Hope you have a great field day. This is K4LRG, QRZ Field Day. QRZ Field Day. This is K4LRG. Whiskey Alpha 8, Tango Zulu Delta. This is K4LRG, your 5 Alpha Virginia, over. Roger. 1 Charlie. 1 Charlie. IG West Virginia, thanks. Have a great field day. This is K4LRG, QRZ Field Day. K8 Zulu Charlie, your 5 Alpha Virginia, over. Thanks for the 6 Alpha Ohio. Have a great field day. This is K4LRG, QRZ Field Day. W2LVs, K4LRG, your 5 Alpha Virginia, over. Roger, 3 Alpha, 3 Alpha.
Okay, notice that the previous data that N1MM had is not current for this year. So even though it put 5 alpha in there, I overwrote it with 3 alpha to correct it.
K4LRG, Roger, Northern New Jersey. Have a great field day. QRZ, this is K4LRG. W0, Whiskey Mike Lima. This is K4LRG. You're 5 Alpha Virginia, over.
Roger, you're 1 Alpha. 1 Alpha in Iowa, over.
Roger, 1 Alpha Iowa. Have a great field day. This is K4LRG. QRZ. CQ Field Day, CQ Field Day. This is Kilowatt 4 Lima Romeo Golf, K4LRG Field Day. So Whiskey 4, come again? Roger, W4 FCA, this is K4LRG, you're 5 Alpha Virginia, over. Thanks and good luck.
Okay, so there's a good example. If you're sitting right seat and you hear something different from the operator responding to the call sign, the call sign is actually Fox Charlie Romeo, and now you heard the operator say FCA, so you're probably deferring to him, and then all of a sudden you've logged an incorrect call sign. So what you do now is you hit, after you determine that that mistake is made, you hit Control Q and you just hit space until you get to where you want to be, and you change it back to SCR and you're done, and then you can move ahead.
QRZ Field Day. So at 5, come again. K5 WNH, this is K4LRG, your 5 Alpha Virginia. Roger, Roger. Thanks to Northern Texas. Have a good field day.
Okay, one example there now, somebody was way off frequency. It's a good time to use RIT, Received Incremental Tuning. And the cool thing about N1MM is if you're in run mode, which we're doing right now since we're calling CQ, and you use the scroll wheel, it actually will RIT your radio. This is a pre-recorded system, so I can't actually tune that guy in, but one thing that a skill you're going to need to learn to do for HF is how to copy people that are off frequency. Because if you're in net control or if you're running a frequency like this, you can't be tuning your radio around and changing your frequency because everybody else is going to be chasing you, and it turns into a little bit of a cluster. So learn to copy folks that are off frequency.
K4LRG, QRZ. QRZ field day. This is K4LRG. NY6J is K4LRG. You're 5 Alpha Virginia, over. Roger, 1 Echo Indiana. Have a good field day. K4LRG. QRZ.
Okay, that's probably enough. I don't have any more to present, but I'm more than willing to answer questions. And I've also talked to a couple of folks in the club about actually having a Zoom session focused just on N1MM, where folks that are interested in installing it and getting it set up can do that live with their computers, and then we can do screen sharing and help you get it set up if you're interested in doing it. I'm willing to support that activity as well.
Rick, Don,
yes.
if folks want to take advantage of that kind of offer, how do they do that?
Well, it will be announced through the club. What I'll do is, if I do it on my own, I want to talk to club leadership, see if they want to make it a club activity. I'll put something out to the
answer is to everybody, if you want to get Rick's help with getting N1MM, stay tuned. We're going to announce it on the General Reflector. Fair?